Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Alberta Prosperity Project's regular, at least starting regularly tonight, Wednesday night webinars. We're very pleased to have two very special guests with us tonight, Katherine Kowalchuk and Pastor Artur, and our moderator will be Tanner Naday, who many of you will know as well. And I'm going to turn it over to Tanner and let him take it from here. We will ask for questions, probably about the 30-minute mark, and Tanner will moderate those questions as well. So thank you for joining us, and Tanner, it's all yours.
Sure. Well, thank you, David, and thank you all so much for joining us tonight to host this TIP webinar. I'm so excited to be moderating. I'm going to do my very best. I know on the poster it said that my brother, that Hunter, would be with us, but alas, he's actually traveling right now. And so if you were hoping for Hunter and a little banter back and forth, I am so sorry. But tomorrow we'll have our podcast out, and it's a fun one. So if you want to tune in tomorrow as well. What we're going to do for the structure of this webinar is we'll start by allowing the candidates from TIP to just give a brief introduction and a pitch of their platforms individually. And then I'll ask a couple of questions that I and a couple of my colleagues have created and vetted. Very simple, very short. And then as an audience, I believe those individuals, you individuals who are watching, will be able to send in your questions, and then I will ask them directly to Katherine and Artur. So we're so excited. Perhaps if we want to get going, to begin with, if both candidates, we'll start with Katherine, would like to give just a short 5 to, let's say, 10 minutes, a 10-minute pitch of your platform, what you hope to accomplish, and why you're running, et cetera, et cetera. We'll start with that and go from there. So Katherine, you have 10 minutes.
Wow, thank you. Thank you, Tanner and APP, for having us here today. Well, for those of you who I haven't met or haven't heard me speak on the APP circuit or otherwise at a rally, my name is Katherine Kowalchuk. I'm a lawyer. I've been practicing for over 20 years in Alberta. I'm practicing family law, and it's become very challenging these days. I feel that my client list is exploding, and I don't know if that has to do with the uncertainties of the time and the stress that people are under, but in any event, I'm finding it that a lot of people require help these days. And I'm also a mom. I am a mom to a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old, and I'm also stepmom to an 11 and 12-year-old. So when we have the children, our household is quite busy because we also have 3 dogs. So it's a little bit of a madhouse where I'm at. I got involved and I decided to run for the leadership of the Independence Party because, the primary reason was because I have children and I deal with divorcing families all the time who are under an extreme amount of stress. And based on the trajectory of where I was seeing things going the past 2 years in particular, I'm quite afraid for them, and I'm not really afraid about anything typically, but I am afraid for their future. And so I decided that I needed to do something about it. And originally that included co-founding Lawyers for Truth. And if you have followed Lawyers for Truth at all, we started in December 2020, and our primary mission was to fight against the masking and empower people to assert their rights and freedoms as we knew them as lawyers to be up until that point, at least until the courts started ruling in favor of the government. And when that occurred for a year or so, and this was across Canada and within Alberta, and based on my own experience dealing with litigation in a family law scenario related to the forced vaccination of children and parents not being able to decide whether or not to vaccinate their kids with the COVID-19 vax, I realized that I needed to pivot. And instead of becoming a lawyer who felt very powerless, I felt very powerless within the legal system because many people wanted relief. And For anybody who has been part of the legal system, Pastor Art knows this very well, that it's stressful, it's expensive, and it's time consuming, and it takes years to resolve matters. And so I decided that it was necessary to focus on something else and become, hopefully, a lawmaker, and to seek me eventually in the legislature, helping formulate laws to ensure that this madness that we're under attack from right now ends. And so that I was led to the Independence Party because about 8 months ago, and some of you will know as APP members, I started speaking with APP and sharing my experience with the courts, and I understood and became aware of a solution, and that holding a referendum was a viable, legal, peaceful solution to getting the government's attention. And it really appealed to me because after learning about the other options that seemed to just include letter writing campaigns and failed negotiations, I decided that the referendum was a good solution, even though I had never contemplated independence before that point. And so I got involved with TIP originally as a board member, and then the leadership position opened up and I threw my hat in the race. And so here I am now with that. And the more I travel around the province and meet Albertans speaking and otherwise, it's very clear to me that many people in Alberta are also see this as a very good solution. But what appealed to me about this opportunity was that, it was a small party. TIP is a small party when I joined, just around 300 or so members. And I really saw this as an opportunity to grow this party because there weren't to that point, any real struggles within the party. It's such a new party with, there's no legacy politicians involved with it. And that really appealed to me as opposed to other independence focused parties that were maybe small but didn't seem to have that profile or openness to holding this referendum and seeking the solution. So I chose TIP. And, what I hope to bring to this, if elected leader, is to mainstream this party a little bit, to be more than just about the referendum question, but to be if we form a majority government, and that's very important to do in order to enact this plan, to be a party that deals with the injustices that we're facing right now, to ensure that we can be the most prosperous and free province while we are waiting for the solution of the referendum to resolve itself. So part of what I stand for is holding an independent inquiry with respect to COVID and other matters, and maybe even now with respect to what's going on with Chrystia Freeland's visit to Alberta these days, and understanding really what is behind and what got Alberta to its current position. And mostly what I can determine is that it's directly related to our affiliation, Canada and Alberta's affiliation with the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, and the UN, and these ESGs with respect to the environment and other sustainable development goals that really Canadians, I think by and large, had no idea were influencing Canadian policy and Canadian lawmaking. And so I want to understand that a lot better. And I want to get to the bottom of who was responsible for what within Alberta to seek justice and accountability with respect to the rolling out of COVID-19 in particular as well. I think that it's time that we look at the bureaucracy, the bloated bureaucracy in the big government, and reduce the size of government substantially. And I also feel that we need to get rid of the bureaucracy, that especially the ones that are involved in the death and destruction that Albertans are facing and have faced the past 2 years, and hold them both accountable civilly and criminally as appropriate. I believe that we need to enact legislation and repeal legislation. So I would start by repealing the Public Health Act immediately and all of the acts and pieces of law and regulations that are a direct violation of our constitutional rights and freedoms, and ensure that laws are enacted to ensure that these atrocities cannot happen again, and preventing employers, the College of Physicians and Surgeons, for instance, and educational institutions from discriminating against people with respect to their health status. And privacy is a big issue for me as well. I want to ensure that, you know, we live in a society where our privacy is respected and human dignity is respected. And I'm not in favor at all of a digital ID and or digital currency. And I'm not in favor of it until such time as we as a nation or province understand the full implications of it. It's not to say that I'm against technology and advancement. It's just that what the governments are proposing to roll out have wide implications from a privacy perspective and a human rights and freedoms perspective, and that these issues need to go to the people and they need to be debated, and we need to consider the ethical implications of all of these proposals rather than having it forced down our throats and being expected to comply or else type of behavior. You know, the governments have conducted themselves in such an arrogant and egregious manner that there is such a distrust for government from myself included and other Albertans, that it's really time, I think, that we have an independence-minded government led by people who are not afraid to speak the truth. I believe that once Albertans understand the truth and the full implications of what has gone on, that they will understand that independence makes sense, especially because, you know, we need to stop funding this tyranny. And I think the only way to save Canada and other provinces and Canadians is to leave Canada by withdrawing our resources, our finances from their coffers, because we cannot continue to, like I said, continue to fund our tyranny. It's just becoming unworkable, and it's causing death and destruction to many families. So in addition to, you know, what I've laid out, you know, we need to work towards reducing regulation. Everywhere you turn, there's a regulation or there's a fee or a license to conduct our business and live our lives. And it's become such a nanny state that, and I think we've all felt that it's, or myself, I'll speak for myself in particular, that, you know, we've accepted this over time, thinking that, well, you know, there's nothing we can do about it. But there is something we can do about it. And the Independence Party of Alberta is providing a solution for Albertans. And I just want to say, with respect to this notion that, you know, the UCP can be changed and that these legacy parties can be changed. You know, the UCP party and the NDP party both take their marching orders and have bought into the WEF agenda. And to think that these parties are going to change by switching out a leader, I think, is naive. And I've been told by Todd Lowen in a meeting with 50 other people that when he was launching his campaign for leader of that party, that he made it clear that Jason Kenney is not going anywhere, nor is Stephen Harper, and that these people will be pulling the strings behind the scenes, regardless of who the leader is. And that's very concerning to me. And it's sad as well, because you know, we need to change these things. And so this idea that, you know, we have to worry about vote splitting and the NDP getting in is just fear porn. I don't think that there's any merit to it. The NDP swept the province in 2015 because the government was, at that point, the Conservative government was acting in a manner that Albertans had enough of. And I put to the people, has anything gotten worse or better since then, since the UCP became in power? And I think that the answer is it's gotten worse. And So based on that, based on what I see coming in the future for this province and its citizens, food shortages, they're very blatant about it. They're telling us exactly what they're going to do. You know, they're going to be destroying our farming. They're going to be destroying our industry, oil and gas. Again, with Chrystia Freeland coming in and exercising their federal jurisdiction under these UN Sustainable Development Goals that they have, is without any consultation with Albertans or without any meaningful consultation, because I understand that they have given a short time period of 6 months in which to respond to this proposal, which is completely inadequate and quite disgusting, actually, in my opinion. So, you know, things are a lot worse. And 30 seconds. So things are a lot worse. So I think that, you know, I think that we have a really good chance to sweep this and sweep the province and get a majority government. But it's going to take a lot of time and effort. But I know that the Albertans that I've met with anyway are up to the challenge. I'm certainly up to the challenge. Thanks.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Catherine. We'll now turn it over to Pastor Artur Palowski. As all of you know, I might mention just before he begins his just over 10 minutes of introductions and his biography and what he hopes to accomplish and why he's running, etc. If you, the audience, would like to ask questions to these candidates, in the bottom of your screen is a Q&A, a chat, and you can enter your question there, and it will go to our workers behind the scenes to process. They'll take a look at them, and then they'll send them off to me just in a text so I can see them as well as a moderator. So Arthur, you have just over 10 minutes. I'll head off the screen. When I come back on, that'll be your 1 minute warning.
Okay. Well, I am a husband and a father. I have 3 children that were born here in Alberta. As you can tell very quickly, I grew up behind the Iron Curtain under the boots of the Soviets. We escaped on a boat to Turkey and from Turkey to Greece, when we established a highly successful business in Greece, until the Canadian government, believe it or not, approached us and said, hey, why don't you sell everything you have and come to Canada? Canada is the freest country on earth, and no one will ever persecute you for your faith in Canada. So we sold everything we had and we decided to start all over again in Canada. We emigrated here. That took us a few years, of course, filling the documents and doing everything the legal way with medical and all the roadblocks that you have to go through to come and emigrate to this country. I mean, it used to be like that, and not anymore, as you know. We end up in Calgary, Alberta in 1995, and we started a business again, and I became a builder and a developer. I used to own a number of different businesses, and here's what I learned during that time in my life, building houses. You can have the most beautiful structure. You can have a dream of a palace, but if you're building this on a rotten foundation, and that's exactly what we have in our beloved Alberta, a rotten foundation, pretty much at every mountain of influence, if you will, educational system, justice, so-called justice system, political arena, entertainment. I mean, everywhere you look, it's corruption at the highest level. If you want to build something beautiful on the rotten foundation, I'm sorry, it's just a matter of time when everything is going to collapse, and you can put silver and gold on top of that foundation, it will be broken. So we have to start fresh. We have to start from the bottoms up, grassroots, if you will. And my story, of course, started not when I was in a business realm, because when you're in a business and when you're making lots of money, and I used to be very good at what I was doing. I used to have 100 employees. I had 50 job sites at the same time, and I built big buildings, multi-million-dollar houses. I renovated apartment buildings, and I did shopping malls. When you are operating a business like this, you see things and you come across to things. And that was my first introduction to Canadian politics, when I could tell you how much or how many millions of dollars different business people were giving to our local politicians. And that was bizarre for me, because you got to remember, I grew up in a highly corrupted country. Communism, socialism is corrupted to the core. And over there, they were not hiding that corruption. 50,000 communists, wannabe pharaohs, were ruling over 36 million Polish people with the iron fist. And I thought that Canada is different, but here, well, everything was done with the white gloves. And then I became a Christian, I became a pastor, and I started to work with the homeless people, which that's what I do since 1999. I feed homeless people and natives at the reserves since 23 years right now. We are feeding thousands of people 3 times a week. And during the pandemic as well, we have never shut down. We have never stopped helping people, Albertans. And for that crime, as you remember, I was arrested multiple times and fined, 340 citations, over 100 court cases, 40 COVID tickets, and right now 16 arrests. Why is this important to me? Why I am such a stubborn individual fighting the establishment? Because I'll tell you something, the moment freedom of religion goes down, all your other rights go as well. And that's not Artur Palowski, gospel according to Artur Palowski. This is history. The moment freedom of religion goes, all the other freedoms will disappear as well. And growing up under communism, of course, communists do not believe in God. So they were murdering priests, they were arresting pastors, they were really, really persecuting people of faith. And that's exactly what I see happening right now. So in 1995, I walked away from the business and I started to work with the homeless people full time. So I dedicated my money, I sold my properties, and I started to help the poor. And my clashing, if you will, or head-on collision with the corruption happened in 2005. That's how long I am fighting with the establishment, with the Goliath, if you will, in this country. When the government said that giving free goods and services is no longer legal, that distribution of printed material is also illegal, placing material on the ground, having illegal signage. Our signage was Jesus loves you. That was unacceptable. We were charged with stunting. We were charged with all kinds of crazy accusations, and we fought. I decided I'm not running again. I'm not going to move to another country. I'm not running to United States. I'm going to stay here and I'm going to fight. And let me say something to you. In the middle of the war, when you have been invaded, when you're under attack, when there is a war, you have to consider hiring a warrior instead of a teacher. I mean, there is a time for teachers, there's time for lawyers, of course. We need them. However, when you are in the middle of the battlefield, when you are in the middle of war, you need a warrior, and you need a warrior that has been fighting for a long time and knows what he's talking about. So I decided to fight. And of course, police showed up, ILO showed up, mainstream propaganda machinery showed up. They did a crazy campaign. And another thing you have to consider, I don't care what the mainstream media writes anymore. I mean, after thousands of articles about me, it doesn't matter what the enemy says. It doesn't matter what the liars are saying. And when you look at the UCP debates right now, those people, they're terrified of the mainstream media. They want to please the beast. I hate the beast. I don't want to please the beast. I want to destroy the beast. I want to defound the CBC. We have to do something to put a stop to this insanity of misinformation and disinformation in our beloved country, in our Alberta. So I decided to fight. And of course, when you fight corruption, well, they will come with a hammer, and they did. They've arrested me repeatedly, and they ticketed me without mercy. And like I said, I faced over 100 court cases as a victim of this tyranny, and I prevailed. In 2015, I won my last fight, and the government reinstated my permits, and I could continue to do what I am good at, which is feeding people and giving people hope. And of course, the COVID came, and I became the first Canadian to end up with a COVID ticket. As you remember, I was surrounded by police, threatened with arrest and multi-million-dollar ticket. And that was my 2020. During that time, my record was over 100 police officers, 52 police cars, 20 cops on bicycle, chief of police and anti-terrorists. And that's how my year of 2020 ended with 15 COVID tickets. And then 2021 came and they started to harass, intimidate us in our buildings. And I wish that people would do what I did. When they invaded our church, I just told them to get out. And I was thinking to myself, if everyone did that, if everyone would actually say no more, not anymore, we would not be in this mess that we are today. Why independence? When I was arrested the last time for my speech to the truckers, as you remember, in Coutts and in Milk River, I was asked to conduct a series of church services to the truckers, which I gladly did. It was one of the best moments in this country. I mean, it was absolutely beautiful. What I saw was family, solidarity, different colors coming together, different backgrounds, different creeds, children, all coming under the umbrella of freedom, under the umbrella of Canadian flag. I was asked to conduct a series of church services, give them hope. That's pretty much what I was asked to do, come and give us hope. So that's what I did. I took my son and I loaded the car with food, and we put speakers there, and we did the church service, Lord's Supper for them. And it was amazing. People were crying and people were hugging each other, and we had a prayer. And then I went to Coutts, to the point of entry between Montana and Alberta, and I did the same thing. And for that speech, as you know, I became the first Canadian ever to be charged with interfering with a crucial infrastructure under the Defense Act. I mean, I was charged with terrorism for giving people hope. That's how much they are afraid of my voice. That's how terrified they are. And then, I don't know if you have seen the takedown. It was like takedown of El Chapo, Al Capone of Alberta, Escobar of Calgary. There was RCMP, there were detectives, they were Calgary police, uniformed officers, SWAT team, and then undercover as well. I was interrogated for hours, and then I was placed in prison, stripped naked, faced metal iron cages, solitary confinement, and then they placed me in max spot, and eventually they put me, without the knowledge of the doctors or AHS, illegally, they placed me in a psych ward over there. It was to break me. During that time, they offered me a bribe. They said, if you plead guilty to some little charge, all the big charges will go away. And since I said publicly that I am considering running for a political office, the establishment came with bribes already. They offered me a cushy job, they offered me a title, lots of money. They said, just don't run for political office. That's how much they're afraid of my voice. It's actually bizarre, because I don't consider myself that extremely dangerous, but obviously they're terrified of a man that doesn't take the knee, a man that will not bow, and a man that you cannot buy. I'm not for sale. They offered me $2 million to stop doing what I'm doing, and I said, no, I am not for sale. I am content with what I do. I am a pastor. I am content with that salary. And like I said before, I'm not going to be taking a penny from taxpayers. I am giving up my salary for the benefit of the homeless people. All that I will be receiving will go back to the charity, because I don't need taxpayers' money. I have a job, and the church is supporting me, and I want to serve people. That's what I want to do. So when I was in a solitary confinement, I had a lot of time to think, and I decided that fine, if they will not allow me to be a pastor, then I will become a pastor politician. And what was chasing me yesterday, I will be chasing today. We need accountability. We need rule of law back into our beloved Alberta. We need check and balances, which are right now thrown out the window. We need someone that understands corruption, has fought corruption, and knows how to deal with corruption. You need someone that will not take a knee.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I also want to remind the audience that we are getting open questions in. Thank you so much. If you have a question, keep sending them. They're coming to me. What we're going to transition to now is a few individuals and myself from APP have drafted just a few questions to ask the candidates. Once those questions are completed, there's just 3 of them, then we will turn it over to the audience, to the members who want to ask any of the candidates' questions. And so I will ask a question to one candidate. Both of you, of course, will have an opportunity to answer. I'll tell you how long you'll have to answer, and well, it's going to be a lot of fun. So the first question, I'll start with Arthur. Here's my question, Arthur. It says, given that oil, petroleum oils, and natural gas are Alberta's top exports, and considering that we're already policy locked in Confederation with bills like C-69 and 48, what would you do to create a desirable regulatory framework in Alberta and introduce more oil and gas investment and exports in Alberta, and also avoid the problem of landlocking? You have 2 minutes to answer the question.
But first of all, when you gain independence, what is independence? Independence from Ottawa and their grip, and also a personal independence, which should be always a God and state given right. So when we will gain our independence, we are going to be able to dictate to the rest of the Confederation, especially Ottawa, how things are going to work. And, I have traveled in the United States of America, and I'm telling you, Americans would love to do business with Alberta. However, we are being constantly blocked and hurt by Ottawa. As you know, Ottawa hates us. Ottawa is doing everything in their power to undermine our resources. If we had independence, if we would gain our own independence with our own jurisdiction, with our own police force, with our own judges that will be elected, not appointed by those crooks, well, we will be dictating how things are going to go. If we were to be given that opportunity, we can turn Alberta into Saudi Arabia of North America. We have more resources than any other country on earth. We have not just oil, we have gas, we got forestry. We can become the most prosperous province and territory in the Confederation, but they will never allow us to do that. We have to gain the independence. That's why I joined this party. I joined this party because it's giving us that opportunity to govern ourselves. And why not? I mean, in the end of the day, who those people think they are in the federal government to do everything in their power to destroy our future and our opportunities? Justin Trudeau doesn't even mention during his speeches that Alberta exists. So we need to form a government that will be tough enough, strong enough, willing to fight with those wannabe tyrants to gain our independence. And when we have it, the sky is the limit.
Thank you. Thank you, Arthur. Okay, Katherine, the question is now posed to you. You have 2 minutes.
Thanks, Tanner. Well, first of all, we require independence. We require a majority government in order to seek this. So, and as an independent Alberta, we will be, masters of our own destiny, and we will be able to withdraw and sever our ties with the UN, World Economic Forum, and World Health Organization, those institutions that are the globalist institutions that Canada is receiving its marching orders from, including Alberta. So we have to divorce ourselves from these globalist institutions, and we're not going to be able to do much of anything while Alberta is still tied and Canada is still tied to these sustainable development goals and these directives from these globalist elites. The next thing we have to do is we need to get rid of all the regulation and red tape. So as I said, I believe in smaller government. So we need to repeal the laws and the regulations that make business unworkable and stand to a halt. I do agree with Artur that, I believe that once we are freed of these shackles, that we will be a destination for capital. And I think that people will flock to Alberta because of our progressive, truly not woke progressive, but progressive policies in respect to our oil and gas industries. But, the first step, though, Tanner, is we need to ensure that this party, in our quest to become a majority government, the negotiation is starting right now with all of Albertans, and we need all of Albertans to understand and understand what they're up against. So the truth has to be, they have to become informed, but they also need to be welcomed into this party. All Albertans need to be welcomed. And so we need somebody who is able to bridge this information gap, because there are many people that are not happy with our governments for reasons other than rights and freedoms. And I hear this a lot, because a lot of other people want independence for other reasons. Maybe it's high inflation, or maybe they have a different perspective with respect to this.
Perfect. Thank you, Catherine. Excellent. My next question for you both, and this time we'll start with Catherine. It says this: in Texas, there is a law that bans state agencies and most governments, whether municipal and state, etc., from conducting business with corporations that are explicitly anti-oil and gas or promote the increasingly prevalent ESG scores. Last week, the state, you might call him the auditor or the treasurer, banned the government, the Texas government, and state agencies from conducting business with BlackRock and certain funds and banks like JP Morgan. Would you, as leader of TIP and possible premier of Alberta, adopt a similar policy and ban provincial agencies from doing business with corporations like BlackRock? And would you extend that to other businesses in the private sector as well? Meaning, would you ban private business from doing business with BlackRock and other corporations? Catherine, you start for 2 minutes.
Well, from a government's perspective, and I actually commented on this the other day on Facebook, Tanner, that article exactly where the controller of Texas created that law. I agree with it. I think that we need to be principled in a new Alberta, and we need to ensure that we are doing business with people that share Albertans' same values, and that it's in the best interest of Albertans ultimately. You raise an interesting issue with respect to private companies. I mean, the problem right now that we're having is that unless these companies have these ESG scores that are very loosey-goosey, I'll say, there's no real tangible performance measures that make any sense or that have been codified anywhere. So it seems to be a very fluid rating system that these companies face, but there are major implications for this rating system, including access to capital. And so what these global elites are doing indirectly is they are starving our industries of capital, our companies of capital, to comply with this global social agenda of inclusivity, equity, and diversity, which I believe is completely antithetical to a Christian-based society, which I believe Canada and Alberta is based upon. So, whether or not private individuals want to go ahead and or private business wants to do that, I think when they get the information and when they understand the implications of trying to jump through these hoops, these ESG hoops that seem to be completely broad and likely always ever changing, I doubt that they'll want to seek that. And I know that there's a big push, especially in the US, for alternative capital structures, and access to capital are being developed right now to combat this woke-focused economic policies.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Artur, to you.
I would say to you, do not do business with those that want to destroy you. And this, what comes to mind is ethical and unethical oil. We're doing business with Saudi Arabia, and if you know anything about Saudi Arabia, you know that their oil is not ethical at all. I mean, this is a country that is run by terror, dictatorship, tyranny. Those are the people that are throwing other human beings off the roof, and they're treating women like dogs. And somehow people get the idea, or liberals put it this way, and NDPs, that their oil is clean, but somehow Alberta oil is dirty. I mean, I have a problem with that. Also, you need to give incentives to the companies. If it comes to monitoring as a government who government deals with, it's a no-brainer. You do not support the beast that wants to destroy you. If it comes to private business, however, we cannot become the tyrants that we are fighting right now, because it's very slippery slope. If we're going to start monitoring private businesses, who they can do business with and who they cannot do business with, well, that's their business. And the government should not be in the bed of private citizens. If it comes to government and our money, taxpayers' money, well, like I said, that's a no-brainer. You do not support the beast that wants to destroy you and undermine your opportunities in the future. So I agree with what Texas is doing, and I will also not push this all the way to a private sector. Let the private people make up their own minds. Let them live their own lives according to their values. But as a government, you have to lead. There is this famous English saying that a fish starts to sting or rottens from its head. We need to make sure that the head is clean. And I'm telling you, if the head is clean, it will trickle on the rest of society.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Artur. Well, we have so many questions coming in that we're just going to go right to the audience. Again, if you have a question to ask, please place it in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. But we're just going to keep the same format. I'll ask the question, and we're still going to have some more fun. So the first question to both candidates. Both of you have spoken passionately regarding holding accountable those in authority who imposed harmful mandates and cruel treatment of those who publicly opposed those mandates. Both candidates have also commented in favor of compensation to those punished for non-compliance. There is definitely a need for accountability. There is a need for true justice. In theory, there is a need and a just cause for compensation. From where would this money for compensation come? Who decides, and by what criteria, which victims would be compensated and how much? Katherine, you first, 1 minute.
Well, I think the compensation has to come from the very same people that perpetrated this atrocity onto Albertans and Canadians. I mean, who knows how much they have squirreled away based on, after the investigation is done, we will have a very clear picture about who was responsible for what and what they received and how much, if anything. And that's going to be very important. But, to the extent that our government was involved, we need to look at that. But I certainly believe that it shouldn't fall on taxpayers to right the wrongs of these people who have caused harm, death and destruction to the people of Alberta and businesses. I think that these people need to be held to account. Their assets need to be seized wherever they are globally, and that they need to make restitution themselves as part of this. It's not going to be good enough to throw them in jail based on the criminal charges that will be brought against them, I suspect, but we need, we'll be able to go after them civilly, and they'll need to make restitution through their own profiteering of this.
Thank you very much. Artur, to you, 1 minute.
Well, I would say we need both. We need the taxpayers' money to pay for some, because as a society, we have to recompensate the people that have lost everything. Some of them lost their loved ones because of what was happening. We cannot go after the globalists because we will not have that kind of power. However, as you remember, 2020 shows up and $1 billion from Alberta coffers is disappearing, and then later on a few more billions of dollars disappeared. Well, I know where the money went, and I'm sure you know where the money went. We need to just to go and find where is the money, and I think there's plenty of that where if we look very closely, Well, they have, while they were saying we're in this together, they have been giving themselves a hefty paycheck raises. They have been giving themselves bonuses for what they have been doing to us. So this has to be given back. They were not serving people. They were robbing us and implementing slavery at the highest level. In other words, what I'm trying to say, those people should be charged with treason and all their assets confiscated, and these funds to be used to recompensate those that have lost something during this tyranny. However, I don't think that would be enough. I think we will have to help as a society as well, because the damage that they have done is just too big. Too many
Thank
people.
you.
I just want
Thank
to
you.
add to that, these pharmaceutical companies that claim to have immunity, I mean, we'll need to look at these contracts that were entered into, because, I suspect, fraud will vitiate any sort of immunity that they enjoy under these contracts.
Thank you. Art, do you want 30 seconds to reply to that?
Yeah, as a government, we can look into this and say, hey, if you want to operate in our territory, well, you're not immune. This is not going to be just drag pushing agenda on the society. We'll watch you carefully. And if you will not do what you say, well, be careful, we're coming after you. And not just as individuals, we're coming after you as a government, which ups the game.
Thank you very much. Next question. As I see it, this party is very small. Although separation from Canada is a possibility, I think you will need the support from every city and small town. We need decision makers from top to bottom. Do you have a plan to tackle the mayoral and the councils within the towns and cities throughout Alberta? Art, I will go to you first. You have a minute and a half.
Well, let's not put the cart before the horse. I mean, first we have to start building this party into a power horse. When people will see that it's possible, they will start joining. That's just how it works. Right now, people are looking at this small party and say, well, there is no way that this party can actually tackle the giants of the land. But let me suggest something to you, that all of those other crooked, evil parties, I call them the snakes, the vipers, and the scorpions. So the UCP, the Liberals, and the communist NDPs, the destroyers of economy. So those, one day, they were small parties. They were French minority, if you will, and they were building, they were working hard, unfortunately for distraction. So we're going to do the same thing. And I believe that when people will see success, when they're going to see that we actually can tackle the beast and make something beautiful, they will start joining. And then we will be able to take back our municipalities, our towns, the aldermen's positions, the mayoral positions as well. But we got to start somewhere. Right now, what I hear all across Alberta is hopelessness. People come to me and they say, well, there's nothing that we can do. We've lost voice. No one is listening. They are all crooks. They're all the same. Why bother voting? So we got to spark hope. And that's what I see this party as potential, is sparking a hope for the better future, like lighting a tunnel, if you will. And if we do this the right way, everything else will change.
Thank you so much. Catherine, to you, a minute and a half.
Well, we need to, I agree with that. We will reach all Albertans, and we will convince them, even those who, we will convince all Albertans, those especially who may be disenfranchised with the government for other reasons than rights and freedoms per se. And we need to be this party, and we go to door. We do exactly what we've been doing in a grassroots manner. And we demonstrate through our actions that we can be trusted. And I think that we are on the road to doing that, especially with respect to how we've conducted this debate thus far and respecting the dignity of each other. We also need to look at the Municipal Government Act. Like, all acts need to be reviewed. And so the Municipal Government Act is how the municipalities gain their power through the relationship with our province. So we'll need to look at that. But I also think that, and our viewers are probably would be in line with this, we need to look at our voting structure. We need to see how voting is conducted, and we need to ensure that there's integrity within our voting systems, and that we are using processes and the voting process in a way that can assure confidence in our electoral process. So whether or not we mandate until we can be completely certain paper in-person voting, and things like that. So, and working with the people to expose these lies that we've been subjected to. We need to focus on censorship is a big issue, and we need to focus on those governing bodies as well. That, you know, the city of Calgary, for instance, where I've come from, they're not going to be immune from discriminatory practices. They will be part of the legislation.
Thank you so much. Next question. Excuse me. What do you think are the main reasons for the pervasive corruption that we are suffering under at present? And how do we make sure that the Independence Party will not become corrupt too? Katherine, I'll start with you. You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you know, I think we bear some of the responsibility. We and individuals of our society, by allowing, taking a back seat to how we've been scrutinizing and participating in the political process to date. I think we've become very complacent with that. So I think we need to become re-engaged as a citizenry. We need to be participating in this process, but the real problems here relate to cronyism, arrogance of governments, corruption of governments, and our affiliation with the World Economic Forum and the globalist elite agenda. You know, 2015, Stephen Harper signed us on to the international health regulations, the Paris Climate Accord, Sustainable Development Goals, all the rest of it. And now we are taking, like I said, our marching orders from these globalist elites. And so the Canadian sovereignty, Alberta's sovereignty, has been completely eroded. We don't have that any longer. And we saw that play out nicely the last 2 years, and we're going to see it continue to happen. So that is the root of this. But of course, political parties and corruption and cronyism were part of the problem before. I'm not, you know, naive to that as well. And so I want to install, you know, include accountability measures. And, you know, the TIP policies are already putting forward policies for accountability and holding politicians accountable, including the bureaucracy as well, with annual performance reviews, an independent body to scrutinize these politicians and bureaucrats that have this decision-making power, to ensure that if you're seeking a third consecutive term with respect to an elected position, that you have to justify this to this body, so that we can hopefully avoid this scenario where we have these career politicians that get way too comfortable in their position.
Thank you, Katherine. To you, Artur, you have 2 minutes.
Well, towards zero accountability, it looks like they can do whatever they want, and there's absolutely nothing that we can do about it. The check and balances out the window. It used to be that the media would keep them accountable and expose them. Right now, they're working, the propaganda machinery is working for the politicians. They were paid to do this. I think Goebbels would be extremely jealous if he could see how Canadian propaganda is working right now, at what scale. I have a few points here. How to fix this? We have to keep election as local as possible. Paper ballots. What happened with paper ballots and checks at the door? Who you are? Are you the right person that is going to vote, or you're a cousin of a cousin? So we need paper ballots over electronic tabulation. Minimize mail-in ballots. And we need to elect judges, because right now it looks like those judges, the appointed judges, do whatever they want. And again, the checks and balances are out the window. It's like one party. Everyone is following the same scenario, just flipping the pages of a book, How to Become a Tyrant. Supreme Court's most progressive, according to their own statement in the world. Hates truckers, brags about how progressive they are. We have kangaroo courts. We have malicious persecution. If the government doesn't like you, they're going to send all the Gestapo and the Nazi party to your door just to try to silence you. I mean, we have still prisoners, political prisoners in this country. In this province, we have political prisoners in this province. I mean, look at Tamara Lich, she's still muzzled. She's not allowed to speak. She's not free. I am still on house arrest. I am facing terrorism charges for my speech. I mean, this has to end. We have to bring in ability to recall. If the politician comes and promises you the sky and the moon and the sun and is not delivering anything, well, we have to come back and say, hey, you're just a pathological liar. You lied to us. Step down so we can elect someone that will actually keep his promises. And we have to preserve chain of custody.
Thank you, Artur. Thank you. Next question. Katherine, this one is stated to you. Can you provide your source for stating that the UCP leadership candidates are involved with the WEF? Danielle Smith says they are not associated, and that if the Sovereignty Act doesn't work, she endorses the APP's platform. That doesn't sound like WEF to me. Can you explain, please? You have 2 minutes, and then Artur, I will ask you a separate question.
I don't recall saying that the candidates were part of WEF. So if she can provide clarification for when I might have said that, I do believe that the UCP government, AHS in particular, follows the World Health Organization guidelines, and we are clearly under, as Canada has signed on to these, like I said, Stephen Harper signed us on to the World Economic Forum, and we are a member of the United Nations, of which the World Economic Forum is a subset, and so is the World Health Organization. So, I don't recall saying that about the candidates themselves.
All right, there we go. Thank you very much, Katherine. Artur, because Katherine had a specific question addressed to her, I will now tackle a specific question addressed to you. It says this: given that you are a man of God and pastor, how can you reconcile 1 Samuel 15:23, which says, "For rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he also has rejected you from being king." It says, with your actions of rebellion and stubbornness and consistently breaking the law of the land, why should we believe your intent is godly and not of the enemy? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, this statement is false. I have not broken the law of the land, and the recent vindication by the 3 judges from the Supreme Court of Alberta are saying so. I am a law-abiding citizen. I have never been arrested outside of me feeding the poor. So if this person that wrote this question believes that feeding the poor is actually an act of rebellion, well, I will disagree, because the Bible is very clear. We are to take care of the poor, the orphans, and the widows. Also, would you obey the orders of Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party when he said that the Jewish people are subhumans? Would you call the authorities on them and send them to Auschwitz-Birkenau? Because according to that Nazi party at that time, it was the law. Now, you got to remember, Adolf Hitler was democratically elected as a chancellor in 1933. Would you obey the Nazi orders? So here is a clear scenario. We are being forced to choose either to obey the good word of God and the law of God, which is to preserve life and to help the needy, or to obey the law of man, which is corrupted and illegally implemented against the Charter of Rights and Freedoms that starts with the preamble, whereas Canada acknowledges the supremacy of God and the rule of law. So those people were lawbreakers. The 3 judges said it clearly that what was done to me was done illegally. So I don't know if this person is not up to speed regarding to the cases. I have been so far vindicated from everything because I am not a lawbreaker. I am exposing corruption, and the corrupted government is penalizing me for that exposure. I am a political prisoner because I hate corruption and I want to get rid of corruption, and they're simply terrified of that. And I'm not the first one. I mean, look at the Mahatma Gandhi, look at Solidarity movement in Poland under Lech Wałęsa, look at Martin Luther King Jr. that was assassinated by corrupted government because they're terrified of his exposure.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Artur. Next question. With our resources being owned by outside entities, mainly China in the oil sands, how do you plan on managing and how are we going to retain the investments and economic strength in Canada? Artur, I'll ask you first. You have 1 minute to answer the question.
Well, first of all, I would give enormous incentives to our brothers, or older brothers, if you will, our friends, neighbors, United States of America. Look what happened. I remember we were booming. We were the hub of energy just a few years ago, and we raised taxes. We killed our brothers, our neighbors, and we shoo them away back to Texas. When I would become a leader, I would give back the incentives for those companies to come back, and we will have an amazing relationship with our neighbors. Why give to China while we can both prosper, United States and Canada together?
Thank you. Katherine, to you. You have 1 minute.
Well, I think we have to look at the laws in terms of who can own property and who can own companies that own access to resources and production. We do have laws on the books right now, foreign ownership laws and residency requirements. I don't know how stringently reviewed or monitored they are, but I think we need to do a better job as a nation, as an independent nation, to ensure that it's Albertans first, and that we perhaps could look at significantly limiting and curtailing foreign ownership with respect to these companies and these resources.
Thank you. Next question, and this one is near and dear to my heart as an economist. Would you also get rid of the central bank currency? And if so, or if not, please provide your justification. Katherine, you have 2 minutes to start.
Oh, wow. 2 minutes to discuss central bank currency. That's fun. Okay. You know what? I think we need more information about this, and we're going to have to see where we are as a nation once we become an independent nation. I certainly think that we need to engage the experts and the people who understand this issue from all perspectives, not just from an economics perspective, but as do a full cost benefit analysis with respect to how any sort of monetary policy will affect Alberta. But any sort of monetary policy must reflect the values of Albertans. So we need to get clear on that as Albertans, what we value. And therefore, and we'll have to see, what currencies are strong, and we have to be open to all perspectives, even the perspectives from people that, regardless of their political stripes, shall I say.
Thank you. Artur, to you, 2 minutes.
Well, I am a man of God, and I love gold standard. In other words, God's money. I mean, there is no brainer. Every country that had a gold standard prospered every single time. The moment nations move away from that, well, we have a disaster. We're printing money. Fiat currency is collapsing left and right. We have inflation, and this is just the beginning. I'm fearing that we might enter depression, just like in 20s and 30s. So we have to go back to something that actually worked, and it was a solid foundation, and that happened in 1920. So we have to go back to something that worked, and like I said, gold standard, I believe it's the must. But I believe that people will have that opportunity to decide for themselves. For example, I work in Africa, I work in Belize, Barbados, and over there it's 2-to-1. People are exchanging American dollar for their currency. Actually, you don't need their currency. You can just pay with American dollar. You can pay with Canadian dollar as well here. And this is a discussion for the future. But my personal preference is always gold standard. We should go back to something that is unmovable, unshakable. But that's like taking a cart before the horse. Let's have independence first, and we will worry about currency. Later on, we have bigger fish to fry. We have to renegotiate our place in confederation. Right now, we are being raped, robbed, and everything that we have is being stolen from us by Ottawa. We need to deal with that first. Then we can talk about our own currency, or do we keep Canadian dollar, or we move into American dollar. That's a discussion that people will have input to later on.
Thank you. Next question. The Independence Party sounds more and more like a libertarian philosophy. Is this the foundation of you, and do you believe this is the foundation of the party? Arthur, I'll start with you. You have 1 minute.
Well, if we're talking about freedom, I am a huge advocate for freedom. I believe that the government's place is not in your bed or in your affairs, or like we have seen in the past 3 years, the government was telling you who you can see, who can visit you, can you see your grandma or your children? I mean, this is a definition of tyranny. And remember, I grew up under the boots of that tyranny, where the government was interested in everything you were doing. So, but I'm also a lover of freedom. I believe that people should be able to choose their own path. The government's place is not to enslave people and monitor them. I love freedom, and I want people to be free.
Thank you. Katherine, to you, 1 minute.
Can you please repeat the question, Tanner?
I can. The Independence Party sounds more and more like it's founded on libertarian philosophy. Is this
we can do it. If more people will join, we're going to establish ourselves all across Alberta. And it's a process, it takes time. And if I'm not elected a leader, I'll still stay and keep plowing this field until one day we will get our freedoms back.
Thank you. The next question, and this one was worded a little bit funny, so I'm going to do my best to interpret it. It says, do you agree that a vote in the next election for the Independence Party is the referendum on independence? Do you agree that if the Independence Party is voted in next provincial election, you might as well have a referendum the exact next day? Or would you have to wait a while and have an additional referendum some months down the road? What's your opinion on this? Arthur, you're up first, 1 minute.
No, of course, it would send a clear message to everybody that people want what we're offering, but you can't do it the next day. You have to establish government. You have to do it properly. You have to go back to the people and they have to be informed. We don't want to do the COVID tyranny once again or something else. People need time to think. They need to be presented with opportunities. We're not tyrants. And you see, this is what I fear the most, that sometimes when you fight tyranny, you can become a tyrant yourself. The very thing you're fighting against, you become. Napoleon Bonaparte is a perfect example. We don't want that. We need checks and balances. We need to form a government. We need to put the force behind that everything we do after taking the government is done lawful and the people know what they are voting for. So it will take a time, but like we are saying in our platforms, within a year, the referendum is going to happen.
Katherine, to you, 1 minute.
Yeah, the TIP platform, and I support, will have a referendum within the first year of forming a majority government. And but we have to be careful because there's going to be a lot of planning and preparation for this. Under the Clarity Act, which gives us this legal authority to have this referendum and seek independence, we need to make sure that the question is a clear question so that we can get a clear majority. And that clear question is going to be interesting. You know, I envision day one of us forming a majority government, we have the moral authority to go ahead to proceed with the referendum within the first year of forming government. And then our negotiations start collaborating with the federal government to ensure that, to the extent we're able to get them on side with agreeing to the clear question that we're going to ask so that we can avoid future litigation. And I suspect upon getting a majority government that Ottawa will be calling us the next day, wanting to figure out how they can entice us to stay. And so, you know, the negotiations start today by convincing Albertans that independence is the only solution. And then it will continue on throughout until we seek independence, up until when we do seek independence. We've won the referendum. That's when the real stuff happens with the negotiation of the separation agreement that we have with Ottawa to divide our assets and debts and transfer contracts and et cetera, that will happen.
Thank you very much. Next question. As we know, once politicians get our votes and gain their seat, we, the voter, is forgotten. The politicians feel that they are now entitled and can do as they please at the expense of taxpayers. How will you keep your government from becoming entitled and doing as it pleases versus going back to constituents and getting input much more often? Katherine, you first, 1:30.
I've already kind of answered this question a little bit, but I'm in favor. Well, there is recall legislation right now that Kenny introduced. I've looked at it. I think that it's really, there's a lot of obstacles there. I'm proposing, and I'm in favor of an independent inquiry. I've already stated that, you know, ensuring that any elected official seeking 3 terms has to go through a vetting process through this independent body to ensure that we don't have this problem with corruption and cronyism for these career politicians, same with unelected officials as well. And, you know, we need to have, one of the things that I support about the TIPS policies is that we want annual reviews. These politicians, including the leader, premier, need to be have these annual reviews, and that needs to be publicly disseminated. The results of that need to be publicly disseminated. And so, but most of all, we need the people out there to be part of this process. I mean, it goes back to my statements about the engagement of the citizens generally. I think it's because we fell asleep that we became complacent and allowed these politicians to make these decisions without really truly holding them accountable. And that we need to re-engage. And I believe that we can have referendums more often on more issues. The currency and monetary issue is a prime example of that. You know, it shouldn't be up to one person or one party deciding this. You know, those options need to be provided to Albertans to decide what they want, because they're the ones who are going to have to live with this. And so it's re-establishing and re-envisioning a different way of governance entirely.
Thank you,
That's what
Catherine.
we propose.
Arthur, to you, just over a minute 30. Go ahead.
Well, imagine the Premier's office staff every Friday going out to the communities, door knocking, asking questions. Imagine elected politicians having town halls for a change. I mean, when this craziness happened, I, of course, appealed it. I first appealed it, the decision of shutting down the soup kitchen to the mayor. Then I appealed it to the Premier, then to the ministers, to MLAs. No one cared. No one even replied to me. And then, of course, later on, we tried to have a meetings with them, but they were nowhere to be found. We need to go back to the direct democracy idea when actually politicians are meeting with those that elected them. We have to go back to town halls every week, elected, or every 2 weeks. I know, politicians are busy. Every 2 weeks, how about coffee with your elected representative? That will keep us accountable. A recall, of course, elected judges, sheriffs that will look closely at elected officials, and anti-corruption force that will actually monitor what's really going on with taxpayers' money. There's many ways to keep politicians accountable. When there is a will, there is a way, and we will bring that legislation into this government.
Thank you. Next question. What is the plan, or excuse me, I should be more specific. What are you going to do to get the urban population on board with your movement or your party? The rural communities seem to be more engaged with the message at the time, considering that the urban communities tend to be more NDP or left-leaning. What will you do as a leadership candidate to get those communities on board? Arthur, you first. 1 minute.
While communication, you have to start clearly communicating with the people, and they need to see the benefit of independence. They have been subjected with terror, with fear for the past 3 years, and not just the past 3 years. This is a game that the government officials, the politicians, the professional politicians, the career politicians, put it this way, are playing. They're always scaring people. They're scaring people about the new things because, of course, they don't want to lose the grip of power. So communication, a meeting with them, going to the municipalities, sitting with people, asking, allowing them to ask tough questions. I mean, right now, a perfect example is that 4 out of 7 candidates escaped your debate. Why? What they're afraid of. Why they are so terrified of questions. Look, we're sitting here, we don't even know what the questions are going to be, which is not easy, of course, and yet we have nothing to hide. Here we are, like open book. We need to bring back this idea that the politician is a servant, not a tyrant that you never see outside of election or on conversation. You need to start this conversation with the people. They need to have open access to elected politicians to understand what they're doing, why they're pushing this idea and not this one.
Thank you. Catherine, to you, just over a minute.
Well, yeah, I agree with a lot of what Artur has said. A lot of it has been people just don't understand. They don't know what they don't know. And so it's going to be up to this party to educate them. And whether it means that we have to go door to door, or we need to have these town halls in these cities, or, a big component of this, and we can't be naive to this, is we need to raise money. We need to raise money so that we can get these advertising campaigns, so that we can get our message out and get the truth out to these people in whatever way, shape, or form. Social media is very challenging. I got a ban the other day for 24 hours for, simply posting an article that discussed these findings about these weird things that are in this COVID-19 vaccine. So exactly, what are they so afraid of? So it's not really an effective way of doing it, but also there are a lot of non-mainstream media sources that we can rely on right now in order to get our message out, and we just need to pound the pavement. 10 people tell 10 people who tell 10 people, And I don't want to shirk the responsibility, but I think what we're going to see a lot of people are going to become open to a different solution, especially when I believe, as the tyranny continues to unfold. And for instance, they need to show digital ID or whatever to get into a grocery store, or inflation goes through the roof, and so they're not actually able to buy groceries. That in a backwards way are going to help open up the eyes of the citizens of Alberta to come to a different solution. And we're going to keep on doing a lot of research.
Next question from this member of the audience believes that democracy is the evil first step towards communism and tyranny. And this individual says we're already there. So do you agree that the independent nation of Alberta has to be in the form of a constitutional republic, i.e. the rule of law, not democracy, the rule of what he calls deranged elites, generally thought to be, part of this new order, so to say? Arthur, you first, 1 minute.
Well, Churchill said, if I remember correctly, that democracy is a form of government that is the best of the worst. I mean, you can't find a perfect scenario. When you have two people, you will have problems, and that's just how it is. So we have what we have. Of course, a republic would be better than democracy, but we have to start somewhere. And we are, it's like going hunting. I'm a hunter. I love hunting. And going hunting and already cutting the skin on a bear that we have not got it yet. Well, let's do first thing first. Let's get independence from Ontario. Let's get our things together. Let's mobilize our own people here in Alberta. Let's have our own police force, get rid of the corrupted RCMP. Let's defund, at least in Alberta, the CBC, the propaganda machinery. Let's elect our sheriffs and our judges. Let's fix what we can at this moment. Then we will move to maybe something better. Maybe this individual can come with some better idea. At this moment, that's unrealistic. I don't want to talk about things that we cannot do at this moment. Let's just do one thing at a time. And the first thing is independence. We have to gain our independence from tyrants, independence from the people that want to destroy us. Like I said many times during this campaign, that there are a few things that we are focusing on. 4 points, if you will: mandate freedom, gun freedom, tax freedom, freedom from corruption. We got to stand up for freedom. That's what this platform is all about. We got to go one step at a time. Let's get independence first, then we'll worry about other things.
Thank you, Arthur. To you, Catherine, 1 minute.
Well, certainly there can be various forms of government, but I am a proponent of the rule of law, and I do want a form of government that recognizes the principles that recognize the supremacy of God. And so, a constitutional republic is certainly one of the things that I prefer. However, there are many different ways to do this as well, potentially. And I'm open to all ideas, but it's not just about me, it's about Albertans and what Albertans want. And I think, we have an opportunity in this new arena that we're heading into, that we'll be able to consult with and ask all Albertans what they prefer and why, ultimately. I mean, part of the issues that I have, and it goes back to the same thing that I keep on, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but we want to make sure that we we empower people to become as engaged as possible, because when you have an engaged electorate, I think that more empowered and more in control of, because they're participating at a level that they haven't participated in. And I want to restore that responsibility back onto the individuals.
Thank you, Catherine.
Where it belongs.
Next question. Let's say Alberta does gain independence. Ottawa will impose every sanction that they can on Alberta, most likely crippling our industries. How do you propose that you will combat this scenario? Catherine, 2 minutes, you first.
Well, we forge ahead with contracts and allegiances with other nations. I think the United States will be very open in wanting to do business with us. And if Canada wants to go ahead and do what they have, well, I mean, they're essentially imposing sanctions on us right now. I mean, let's face it, like we can't get our own product to other parts of Canada. So really, we need an independent government will just, free us from, having to be part of the Canadian regulatory system. And I think once we have that freedom, we'll be prosperous, because there'll be many other countries that are going to want to do business with us. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. To you, Art. 2 minutes.
Well, they will not the same way they didn't do it with Quebec. And Quebec has, they have their independence, they're a prosperous province, and they will not do it for another reason, because they would be crippling their own economy as well. I think when they will realize that we finally have the power to say to them, no more, not an inch. You're not going to be raping, pillaging, stealing, and hating us at the same time. They will realize that we are to be treated as an equal partner, because that we don't have equal representation right now. Quebec and Ontario can do whatever they want, and the Western Canada is completely ignored. The moment we get our independence, they're going to sit down at our table, but we will be negotiating with them from a totally different position, from the position of strength. And that's what we need. We need that position of strength, just like Quebec got it. And I believe we can get a lot more than Quebec got it, and we have the resources to become the most prosperous province in the Confederation.
Thank you. This will be the last question. I'm sorry if your question wasn't asked. We tried to move as quickly as we could, but there were just so many. So this will be the last question, and then we'll have a few closing remarks from the candidates, and then from myself and David. So the last question is quite simple. If we became independent, if Alberta became independent, there would be tens of billions of dollars that stay in the province instead of being sent to Ottawa every year. What would be your first priority with that new influx of cash that's usually given away? What would you do first with that money, those billions of dollars that remain in Alberta? Arthur, you first, 1 minute.
Well, revive our economy, revive our business, give incentives to small businesses, recompensate those that lost businesses and their way of providing for the loved ones because of this tyranny. I mean, here is the money that will be left in our province that can be used for something good. When you have healthy businesses, and I'm talking about middle class, small businesses that are pushing our economy, they are the heart of any economy, well, then we will prosper even more. And then you have to invest in your energy sector. That's where the incentives are coming from towards United States of America. Instead of telling them we are going to raise taxes to drive you away from our business, we're going to lower taxes for them to bring those headquarters back like we used to have just 10 years ago. I mean, that's why Calgary was the hub of energy. Alberta was the center of energy in North America. We can have it back. But we are not allowed to have it back because we have a very hostile, evil government in Ottawa that hates Alberta. I mean, Prime Minister is not even mentioning Alberta in his speeches, right? So that tells you everything. He hates us. He hates the way we're living, the way we stand for. So this money will be given back to Albertans. After all, this is your money. Is not Trudeau's money. And the beautiful thing about independences and the money staying here is that the money will be governed by the people that you know and are here. What does Trudeau and his government know about our needs, about Alberta, our industry, the beef industry, the agriculture, the oil and gas that he hates? So the money that we generate should always go back to the people that are living in those regions. And
Thank you.
Klein knew that perfectly.
Thank you, Arthur. To you, Catherine, just over a minute.
Yeah, well, of course, we have to ensure that our economy is protected and make sure that, we're strategic in how we are getting that back to the people. But, we need to also look at the holistic situation, and when see where we're at, when to see how much debt we have as a nation, what happens when we negotiate the separation agreement. I mean, so yes, we will have billions of dollars, but we want to be strategic, I think, in how we deploy it. We're going to have a lot of things to do within government in order to make sure that the politicians that were made responsible for this are held accountable, but we're also going to have to ensure that people, of course, that money is appropriately and responsibly injected into the economy so that it can be sustained, and that we have a plan to deal with any and all debt, and what are the priorities going to be for Albertans. I believe Albertans truly want balanced budgets, and I think that is part of it. They also want a government that's responsible and will save and not be spending willy-nilly just because they have money in their coffers.
Thank you. Oh, perfect. Go ahead. Thank you, Catherine, very much. Now, to closing remarks. Thank you so much for all of the questions that you sent in. We are going to have 5 minutes of closing remarks from each candidate. After that's concluded, I will give just a brief conclusion myself, followed by my colleague, David Steckenrider. So to Arthur, because Catherine started the evening, you'll get to finish it off by beginning. So if you want to give 5 minutes of your closing remarks, that's excellent. When you see my face back on the screen, that will be a 30-second warning. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you so much. So again, like I said before, there are 4 main points that we need to bring back to the table: a mandate freedom, tax freedom, gun freedom, and freedom from corruption. All of those things we were subjected to in the past 3 years. And it's very interesting because as much as they wanted to mask us up, and they were doing everything in their power to put the muzzle on our faces, at the same time, they exposed themselves. In a way, they took their masks off, and we realized, some of us realized sooner than others, but pretty much everyone that has his eyes open realized that the level of corruption is absolutely unbelievable. They're monsters. Those people are haters of democracy. They're haters of freedom, and they're doing everything in their power to take more of our freedoms away. I mean, the gun grab that is happening right now, and where are the Alberta politicians firmly opposing the private property rights? Where is the Defense Act that people actually can defend themselves, like a castle defense idea? I mean, right now we have a system that penalizes the victims and gives incentives to the villains. So I have some few points that I want to give to the people. We have to bring the Nuremberg trial for the adverse reactions for the job injured people that were forced to take it because of fear of losing a job, or fear of not being able to see loved ones. I mean, that's a criminal intent, and those people should be facing some kind of a Nuremberg tribunal. We also deserve option. We don't have options anymore. It's whatever they say goes. It's like true tyranny at the highest levels. They are saying something and automatically becomes the law. Like the Pharaoh is articulating something, a mandate or restriction or this or that, and it automatically becomes the law. And we are the slaves, and we have to follow. No prosecuting donors to trackers. That has to be addressed as well. Change this top-down government. We have to retire big boss government. It looks like those are professional politicians, career politicians, telling us we are in this together. However, at the same time, we are losing businesses. We can't pay for utilities, but they're giving themselves a hefty bonuses left and right. No microchip to buy groceries. I mean, that's another form of tyranny and control, because that's exactly what it is. No scanning to go to concerts, and do not comply when they will come with this craziness. Just simply say no, not anymore. We're free people. And that's why I love the concept of independence, not just independence from Ottawa, the tyrants over there, but also individual independence. People should have the right to choose their own path. They should never be subjected to this level of tyranny, coercion, especially when that is directed at their own body. We have to look at the private property rights. And of course, we know that this is a provincial jurisdiction that they're infringing on. That's why independence is a must. And enough of negotiation. I've heard I remember pretty much every debate I was listening to, we will negotiate, we will talk, we will sit down. Enough of negotiation. We are demanding our rights. Enough of sitting down and saying, please, please don't kill us. Please, please don't whip us anymore. We're not your whipping boy. We got to have a strong leader that looks into their eyes and say, will be able to say, back off. Back off. I am a lion right now, and you have to back off, or else. We need a strong leader that will show them that we mean business.
Thank you so much. Katherine, to you. When you see my face on the screen, it'll be your 30-second warning.
Yeah, I thank you very much. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here tonight and to answer these questions. You know, I think really there's many things that Artur and I agree on, as you know. However, I think ultimately what we're going to, what I stand for is that we need to make sure that we're rid and sever these ties with these globalist elites and institutions that are really behind the scenes here. And we need to be committed to telling the truth. And I will commit to telling the truth and to exposing these lies and ensuring that we are all aware of exactly why we got into this mess, because we have to understand this, if not only if we're going to fix it, but also so that we don't repeat this ever again. And so as a lawyer with over 20 years experience, you know, I've done nothing but negotiation. And we do need a fierce leader, and we do need somebody strong. And I do know that I am that person, because I've stood up and I'm suing the courts with respect to their masking policy that they brought in, which is, you know, definitely a career limiting move from a legal perspective. But we need somebody that understands that life is a negotiation. And just because you negotiate doesn't mean it's a position of weakness. We need to be open, and we need to be the party that appeals to all Albertans, because there's going to be very many Albertans that don't resonate with the message of rights and freedoms. I know this anecdotally, mind you, because of the people that I talked to and my friends who decided to comply with all of the measures, and who will comply with digital ID, who will comply with masking if it gets brought back. You know, these people will be complying, but they may be disenfranchised with the government for various other reasons, because that's how the NDP swept in. Let's remember this. And so we need to be the party, and I want to be the party that is inclusive to all Albertans, that hears all Albertans, that listens to all Albertans, and that is open to all solutions at all times. You can be open to all solutions, and you can be very strong in your position, but we're not going to be a doormat, and we're also going to act in the best interest of Albertans. And that's exactly what I do every day of my career. And that's what I intend to do with the Independence Party, should I be elected the leader. You know, I believe in parental rights. We need to restore parental rights first and foremost now, because our children are at risk of this woke ideology. I mean, first of all, it's none of my business. It's none of government's business what people's sexual preferences are. It's none of their business. And I don't want it to be made any of my business, quite frankly. I want that out of our schools. It has to come out of our schools immediately. And parents need to be provided the rights to make the decisions for their children. As a family law lawyer, I see this all the time in the courts, and how the courts have pandered to the woke society, and they're afraid of cancel culture if they dare say anything that goes against what the mob mentality is. We need to ensure that our children are protected first and foremost, because our public school system needs to be trusted again, and parents need to be given the opportunity to decide these things for themselves. They also need to be given the opportunity to not send their children to school should they not want to, and we should be supporting these parents that want to provide an alternative form of education. In where I live in Standard, Alberta, property rights are a major issue for the people in this constituency, and I think it resonates with all of Alberta. We've seen this with Chrystia Freeland and the federal government wanting to expand the territory just north of Grand Prairie. Until we get this government under control and these global elites out of our hair, so to speak, we're not going to be able to make any progress. But we need to start with the truth, and we need to start by supporting the families where it counts the most, and that is with the parents and property rights, and getting back to communities, bringing resources and decision making back to the community where it belongs. Smaller government, and I know we can do it, because I think people, once they know the truth, are going to see it very clearly, and they're going to want to change.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to the both of you and our audience tonight for joining us. I want to thank Tip personally and the candidates themselves for allowing me to moderate this evening and host this discussion with all of you. It was my pleasure. The Alberta Prosperity Project is a nonpartisan, nonprofit educational society. Our sole mandate is to educate as many Albertans as possible on the benefits and merits of independence. And by hosting this discussion tonight, we hope that we did so, and that you as an audience were given a clearer picture of what the political scene might look like in Alberta. My brief comments here are short. Again, I want to thank all of you for joining us this evening. We hope it was informative. And to conclude the final discussion, I'll turn it over to my colleague, David Steckenrider.
Good evening. I'd like to echo Tanner's thanks to Catherine and Artur for coming tonight. Certainly on behalf of allowing us to have Tip as part of our webinar program and being the first back into our series. I'd also like to thank both of them personally for taking a step forward on continuing their vocal response against what's happened over the last 2 years, and being willing to dedicate their lives and their times to taking on a possibly new task. We wish them both the most success in their endeavors. Thank them again. I'll just like to remind you, next week we'll have a webinar. It will be on property rights with Alan Gauthier and Jeff Rath. So thank you all. Have a great evening, and thank you for staying with us. Good night.
Good night, and thank you, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.